Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week so you can take advantage of this awesome crisis that's coming. This week we have a mostly peaceful tornado that ripped through a Pfizer pharmaceutical plant that destroyed 50,000 pallets of medicine, mostly peaceful. We also have the Biden administration now wanting to go after the gas stoves because we couldn't possibly have any electric shortages coming soon. And we even have a WorldCoin CEO. There's a company that does a digital currency talking about how there's going to be a digital currency that's connected with your digital ID, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's go ahead and get started. U.S. market news. The U.S. corporate earnings for quarter two have been mixed thus far. 75% of the S&P 500 companies reported and exceeded analyst expectations, but it's down below the rate of the last 3-year average, which is 80%. So it looks like even though a lot of the companies are doing well, they're not necessarily doing as well as they were before, right? Which is, we kind of talk about these flags sometimes, right? Where we see, well, they say the economy doing well, but it's not really that well. See what I mean? The U.S. markets in the U.S. were mostly positive. The NASDAQ was the only negative one there at 0.57%. So hilarious. Mostly peaceful, and the buildings are burning in the background. You guys remember that, right? During the pandemic. Canada, the great People's Republic of Canada, higher this week, 1.34%. Overseas market news. There's some interesting news as well from the GDP. In China, they grew at 6.3% from a year ago, which is an amazing number for any mostly advanced country, but they missed the expectations of 7.3. So now that's adding some concern from investors due to the fact that now the second largest economy in the world isn't growing as expected. The export demand is tepid. Remember that China basically makes everything from the world, even babies, and their property prices are sinking even further due to the drop in consumer confidence. European markets are mostly higher. Istanbul was the biggest winner there in Europe, even though, Turkey's kind of both in Asia and Europe. Latin America was mostly higher as well. Middle East and Africa mixed with Nigeria, largest economy in Africa, by the way, taking the biggest winner there. And then Asia and Australia being mixed. Bitcoin and crypto news. The WorldCoin CEO, as I mentioned in the beginning, is talking about how there's going to be a global digital currency that's tied to a global digital ID that will soon be required whether you like it or not. How fun. Bitcoin lower this week, down 1.32%. Is just a touch under 30,000. No other big crypto news so far this week. In commodities, because the food in the U.S. is so delicious, the United States being only the second country to approve lab-grown meat, the only other country in the world is Singapore. There actually reports now that lab-grown artificial meat may be actually worse for the environment than real meat. Like the cows that poop all over the grass and provide fertilizer to regenerate fields, I find this really, really funny because if you guys remember the report from Volvo that talked about how that making a electric car, they had 70% more emissions. I believe it was 70% than making a gas-powered car. Outside of the fact that, these children that are 5, 10, 11 years old are in Congo providing the cobalt that you need to go into those batteries, but it's better for the environment, right? India, the world's biggest rice exporter, 40% of global rice trade, banned the shipments of non-basmati rice to maintain the domestic prices since they're having elections next year in 2024. Just cut out the rice. It's really, who wants to eat so many carbs? Lose some weight. Oil is higher this week due to the supply shortages coming in the last few months. There's also been the rising tensions between Russia and Ukraine, which we'll get into that in just a second, that Russia decided to get out of the deal that allowed the export of Ukraine's from Ukraine. Remember that Ukraine is known as the breadbasket of Europe because they produce so much food for many countries, including a lot of countries in Africa and the Middle East. For agricultural commodities, due to the fact that Russia canceled the grain deal, exploded on Wednesday. Soybeans, wheat, corn all went up by quite a bit. And then the dollar went down just a touch this week. Gold went up 0.33% to 1962. While silver went down 1.29% to 24.64. But the silver miners, they got a little bit of movement. If you guys know, I've been doing that for a while. Financial and banking news. The chaos in the commercial real estate market has officially begun. The great city of Baltimore, where nobody wants to live, has sold an office building for a 63% discount. This has much larger ramifications overall because after the pandemic, remember that a lot of people now either work from home and there's a hybrid schedule or you maybe go into the office a few days a week. And so companies don't really see the need for these office buildings anymore or these offices, right? So what's going to happen now when nobody needs the office buildings and everybody needs to renew their loans? Because remember that majority of these buildings are financed by banks. So if people just stop paying the banks because the tenants are there to pay the rents, to pay the mortgages on the properties, what's going to happen to the banking system? The IMF is they're saying that among the G20 nations, which is the largest largest 20 economies in the world, headline inflation has seemed to have peaked while core inflation has eased. Core inflation, although is still higher than what the expectation is or the rate at which the central banks want inflation to be at. Canada's inflation dropped to a 27th month low at 2.8%. The People's Republic of Canada and U.S. regional bank stocks, best week in over 2 years as of close of the markets on Friday. Just like the People's Republic of Canada, People's Republic of California, People's Republic of New York. Political news. After wanting to reduce gas stoves, the Biden administration now is pushing a proposal to ban the sale of portable gas generators for the environment. Just like you can't have pizza in New York that's made by wood or coal because the environment. Some experts have said that it would be disastrous for millions who rely on generators during outages. And where's my button here? Conspiracy Marcello has something to say about this. I think there's going to be outages, and I think it's going to be soon, because why else would they all of a sudden want to go after gas generators? See what I mean? Prepare yourselves. Conspiracy Marcello is right. The preppers are right. Economic news. Chinese unemployment rate among 16 to 24. People aged the 16 to 24 is at a brand new record high, 21.3%. U.S. retail sales less than expected in June. The consumer spent elsewhere, so the consumer in the United States is still really strong. Remember that the consumer spending in the U.S. is almost 70% of the economy. Corporate news, Netflix shares rose 5.5% after the streaming giant added 6 million paid subscribers, mainly due to their cracking down of sharing of passwords. Tesla is down 10%, even though they had a great earnings season, right? They beat expectations. They produced their first Cybertruck, but they fell over 10% because a lot of people are saying that the stock is overvalued, just like they've been saying for the last 10 years, seems like. Ford slashed prices for an F-150 Lightning EV truck, their electric truck, after Tesla announced that they produced their first Cybertruck. And Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, which is the world's largest chip maker, they posted their first drop in Q1 income in 4 years, went down by 10%. So think about this let's connect the dots. Everything has these chips in them now, right? Even refrigerators that are connected to Wi-Fi and your TV and cars because they're so electronic. So if a lot less people are buying chips from the world's largest chip maker, what does that tell you about the economy? Connect the dots. In technology, Apple recorded an intraday high after they reported that they were going to develop their own AI tool called Ajax to compete with OpenAI, Google, and others. Tesla is discussing an investment proposal to open up a factory in India to produce up to 500,000 cars. And Threads, which was the hailed Twitter killer, has had user engagement collapse of 70%. Now they only have 13 million active users a day. Chinese unveiled a plans to help boost the sales of automobiles and automobiles and electronics. Obviously, a lot of investors like that news because China is still the second largest economy in the world. So if they do well, generally the entire rest of the world does well. And interesting facts this week, a powerful solar flare is going to be possibly interfering with shortwave communication on Monday. X flares are possible, including a proton flare. X flares are the largest explosions in the solar system, while a proton flare is a storm of solar energetic particles. And if you guys didn't know, there was I believe it was, I can't remember the year, I think it was 1818. But there was a solar storm that actually took out the entire electrical grid in the entire world. If you guys didn't know that, look it up. It's called the Carrington event. Massive 150-mile-an-hour tornado mostly peaceful tornado. Decimated a Pfizer plant in North Carolina, destroyed 50,000 pallets of medicine, but it will lead to long-term shortages of anesthesia and other sterile injectables that we need. Seems like just everything is going wrong, right? That's the news of this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.